Hi there, welcome back to Haunting Veils. Tonight, we step into a world of velvet curtains, flickering footlights, and a stage where every reflection hides more than it reveals. The Theater of Mirrors is not just a place of performance. It is a labyrinth of illusions, deception, and secrets that even the keenest eye might overlook. But when a crime shatters the fragile glass between reality and pretense, only one man can untangle the truth from the trickery: Hercule Poirot. This is a mystery where every character wears a mask and every mirror holds a lie. So, gather your wits, sharpen your senses, and prepare yourself for a performance like no other. If you enjoy chilling mysteries and haunting tales, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share to keep the stories alive. Now let's dive in. Chapter 1. The Carnival of Reflections. The spring air was soft and fragrant with the scent of salt and seaweed when Hercule Poirot and his faithful companion, Captain Arthur Hastings, stepped from their hired motor car onto the bustling esplanade of Brackley-on-Sea. The town, ordinarily a quiet retreat for families and retired colonels, had become for 1 week the very epicenter of gaiety. Bunting fluttered from lampposts, banners stretched across the promenade, and the cries of showmen pierced the evening air. For the Royal Continental Carnival had come to town. It was no small affair, not a shabby country fair with tired ponies and wilted toffee apples, but a spectacle of European grandeur. Its reputation had preceded it. Daring trapeze artists, sideshows from the East, a hall of curiosities, fortune-tellers, and a firework finale said to rival the displays of London itself. Most intriguing of all, whispered the townspeople, was the debut of a new attraction, the Theater of Mirrors. Poirot, immaculate as ever in his gray suit, patent leather shoes gleaming, and his mustache waxed to perfection, regarded the scene with his customary air of amusement tinged with faint disdain. Crowds bustled about them, children tugging their parents toward the candy stalls, sailors on leave vying for the attention of girls in bright frocks, and old ladies clucking over the fortune-teller's tent as though peering into destiny were a respectable pastime. Hastings, on the other hand, was quite in his element. His eyes shone as he took in the carnival's riot of colors and sounds. "I say, Poirot, isn't it splendid? Look at those electric lights. Why, it's almost like Paris. And do you hear that organ? Takes a fellow right back to his boyhood." "Your boyhood, Hastings, I fear, was a continual fate," Poirot observed dryly, adjusting his gloves. "But you are right in one regard. There's a certain charm, a gaiety, that stirs even the most tranquil of seaside towns. Yet one must not be deceived. Beneath such brightness, shadows lurk. Always, Hastings, remember, where there are crowds, there are secrets." They moved slowly along the promenade until the press of the people drew them to a grand tent of crimson and gold, erected upon a cleared patch of grass near the seafront. Its facade was painted with swirling designs that caught the eye, and at its peak a banner fluttered proudly: "The Theater of Mirrors. Enter and see yourself as never before." It was here that Poirot's gaze sharpened. A small cluster of notables had gathered near the entrance, awaiting the ceremonial opening. And here, too, the dramatis personae of the mystery were unwittingly assembling. Mr. Felix Harcourt, the proprietor of the carnival, stood at the forefront. He was a stout man with a booming voice and a handshake like a vice. His bright waistcoat stretched perilously across his stomach. His manner was genial to the point of suffocation, yet his darting eyes missed nothing, and the sheen of perspiration upon his brow was not wholly explained by the mild weather. Poirot noted with interest the heavy gold watch chain across his waistcoat, an affectation of prosperity, though perhaps prosperity not honestly earned. Beside him lingered Miss Celeste Marigny, the trapeze artist. She was tall, with raven black hair that fell in waves about her pale, dramatic face. Her eyes, dark and penetrating, surveyed the crowd as though searching for some unseen presence. Though her costume tonight was modest, a cloak over a simple dress, there clung to her an aura of exoticism and melancholy. Hastings, with his usual susceptibility to feminine beauty, whispered to Poirot that she was a most striking woman. Poirot, however, was struck less by her beauty than by the faint bruises upon her wrist and the way her gaze flickered whenever Harcourt addressed her. Near the entrance, cigarette holder poised elegantly between his fingers, stood Mr. Lionel Green. A playwright of rising reputation, Green had cultivated the air of a man both weary of and superior to the world. His dark velvet jacket, his carefully tousled hair, the faint smirk upon his lips, all proclaimed a self-conscious artistry. He was here not as a mere guest. Indeed, Poirot learned from the chatter of the crowd that Green had lent his talents to the theater of mirrors itself, having devised a narrative to accompany the experience. He bowed graciously to admirers, yet behind the mask of confidence lurked a nervous energy, as if he half feared the reception of his work. And then, in full command of the scene by virtue of her voice alone, was Lady Amelia Worthington. A widow of considerable means and unshakable self-importance, Lady Amelia's furs were piled high upon her ample shoulders and diamonds glimmered at her throat. She demanded, in tones audible across the promenade, that she be given precedence in entering, for her ticket had cost a most outrageous sum, and worth every penny, provided it is not wasted upon common rabble. Hastings reddened. Really, Poirot, some people ought to be taught manners. Poirot's mustache twitched. Rest assured, Hastings, life has a way of teaching lessons, even to those who believe themselves beyond reproach. Hovering at the edge of the group was a figure altogether less commanding. Mr. Edward Stokes, a clerk of some modest employment. Thin, nervous, his spectacles forever slipping down his nose, he seemed quite out of place amidst the glitter. His eyes darted from face to face, as though fearful of recognition or discovery. His hands twitched at his sides. His ticket was creased for being folded and unfolded. Poirot observed in silence, his eyes flicking rapidly from one to the next. It was his habit to note small things. The smudge of rouge upon Lady Amelia's glove, suggesting she had wiped her face in haste, the faint ink stain upon Mr. Stokes's cuff, evidence of recent writing, the slight limp concealed by Felix Harcourt's exaggerated stride. The crowd thickened, and at last Harcourt stepped forward, raising his arms for attention. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Royal Continental Carnival, and most particularly to our grandest marvel, the Theatre of Mirrors. Within, you shall see not merely reflections, but transformations. You shall walk among illusions, yet find truths. And who knows, perhaps you shall discover, even yourselves. A cheer went up, and the gilded doors swung wide. Poirot and Hastings entered with the throng, stepping from twilight into a world of glittering light and fractured images. The first chamber was circular, lined with tall mirrors that curved toward the domed ceiling. Every angle multiplied their figures, so that 100 Poirots and 100 Hastings stood gazing solemnly back at them. Laughter and gasps filled the air as children darted between reflections. Couples grasped one another in mock alarm, and elderly ladies tooted at the disorienting effect. From this chamber led 3 passages, each narrowing into corridors lined with angled mirrors. Light played tricks, creating corridors that seemed endless, then suddenly collapsed upon themselves. Reflections grew tall, then squat, then monstrously distorted. Music, faint and eerie, drifted from unseen speakers. Hastings chuckled. Ingenious, isn't it? One hardly knows where one is. Poirot, however, was grave. It is a place of confusion, mon ami, a place where truth is disguised and lies may appear as truth. Such an environment is most convenient for one who wishes to hide. They wandered slowly, allowing the crowd to swirl past them. Poirot noted the reactions of the others. Lady Amelia laughed loudly, though her laughter had a brittle edge, as if she sought to prove herself unafraid. Lionel Green whispered to a young admirer, gesturing at the mirrors with theatrical flourishes. Celeste Marigny moved like a shadow, silent, withdrawn, her eyes haunted. And Edward Stokes, poor Stokes, appeared almost sick with disorientation, clutching at walls, muttering apologies as he collided with other guests. It was then, amidst the kaleidoscope of images, that a sudden cry pierced the air. A woman's cry, shrill, horrified, cut short by a gurgle. Instantly, the chamber erupted in confusion. People turned, mirrors reflected their panic, footsteps clattered. Poirot and Hastings pushed forward, guided by the cries of alarm. Through the mirrored passages, they reached a small alcove, its walls angled to reflect endlessly inward. There upon the carpet lay a body, Lady Amelia Worthington, her jewels glittering in the fractured light, sprawled grotesquely. A jagged shard of mirror jutted from her side, its edge crimson with blood. Her necklace had snapped, and pearls rolled across the floor like scattered tears. The carnival's laughter ceased. Silence spread, heavy and terrible, broken only by gasps and whispers. Poirot raised his hand. His voice, though calm, carried command. Mesdames et messieurs, remain where you are. No one is to leave. Already it is clear. The theater of mirrors has become a theater of murder. Chapter 2, Reflections and Deceptions. The air inside the theater of mirrors grew heavy, as though the glittering maze itself had drawn a collective breath and held it in dreadful anticipation. The laughter of children, the chatter of visitors, the carnival music, all of it had dissolved into an uneasy silence broken only by the muttered exclamations of the stunned crowd. Lady Amelia Worthington lay motionless, her fur stole soaked with blood, her grand diamonds catching the fractured light as if mocking her final indignity. Poirot knelt delicately beside the body, his gloved fingers hovering but never quite touching. A shard of mirror, he murmured softly, driven with force. The angle, Hastings, observe. It is not the fall of a lady who has slipped. Non, non, non. It is deliberate, precise. A thrust with purpose. Hastings, pale and unsettled, nodded. But good heavens, Poirot, in this crush anyone might have done it. There must be 100 people here. Poirot's mustache twitched. Précisely, mon ami. 100 reflections, 100 confusions. A perfect setting for murder. The proprietor, Felix Harcourt, elbowed his way forward, his jovial mask gone, replaced with pallor. My God, this is dreadful. Lady Amelia dead. In my carnival. This will ruin me. Poirot's dark eyes flashed. Courage, monsieur. It will ruin you only if you permit panic. What is needed now is order. He rose, commanding the crowd with his presence. Mesdames et messieurs, attends. You will please remain calm. No one is to leave this theater until the authorities arrive. I, Hercule Poirot, will speak to you all. You will obey. S'il vous plaît. His voice cut cleanly through the murmurs. Heads turned, whispers stilled. For even in England, Poirot's name carried weight. The very sound of it seemed to impose discipline upon chaos. At Poirot's request, ushers barred the exits, and lanterns were brought, their glow spilling across mirrored walls. The carnival's illusions now looked sinister, each reflection a mocking phantom of the truth. One by one, Poirot drew forth the principal figures, the very group Hastings had noted before the tragedy. Each, like a piece upon a chessboard, was to be examined and placed. 1. Felix Harcourt. Poirot faced the carnival owner first. Monsieur Harcourt, you were near the entrance when Lady Amelia entered. Tell me, did you follow? Harcourt blustered, his hands wringing. I was greeting the rest of the patrons. Busy man, you know, taking tickets, answering questions. I didn't even see her go in. I swear it. Poirot regarded him keenly. Yet you were overheard assuring Lady Amelia that she would have the very best experience. You recall Hastings? Certainly, Hastings agreed. The sweat on Harcourt's brow deepened. Merely a figure of speech. She was a demanding woman, God rest her. Always wanted the best. Poirot's gaze lingered. Indeed. And sometimes, monsieur, the best is also the most dangerous. 2. Celeste Marigny. The trapeze artist was next, her dark eyes glimmering strangely in the lantern light. She stood tall, composed, yet the faint tremor of her fingers betrayed agitation. You knew Lady Amelia? Poirot asked gently. Celeste's voice was low, musical, tinged with her native French. We met only once, monsieur. She came to see our performance in Brighton last year. She called me, how do you say, a frivolous creature. She said I wasted my life flying in the air like a monkey. I did not care for her words. Hastings muttered, beastly of her to say so. Celeste's lips curved faintly. I'm accustomed to insults. But Lady Amelia had a way of making enemies wherever she went. Tonight, she mocked me again about my costume and my French blood. I said nothing, but yes, I was angry. Poirot inclined his head. And where were you at the moment of the cry? In the hall of laughter, monsieur, with the distorted mirrors. I saw nothing. Only myself, stretched and broken. Her eyes drifted briefly toward Harcourt, then quickly away. Poirot did not miss it. Whodunits. The playwright approached with an affected calm, cigarette holder poised between his fingers. Yet his hand shook ever so slightly, and ashes fell unnoticed upon his jacket. Mr. Green, Poirot said smoothly, you designed this theater. Tell us, were there places within it where one could be hidden from all others? Green gave a tight smile. Monsieur Poirot, the whole purpose of the design was disorientation. Of course, there are blind corners, alcoves, passages that mislead. But murder? No. It was meant for art, for illusion. And yet, someone used your art for death. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Tell me, what was your acquaintance with Lady Amelia? Green exhaled smoke. She was a patron once, offered to finance a production of mine, then withdrew her support at the last moment, leaving me humiliated, nearly ruined. We quarreled, but that was months ago. Surely you don't think. Poirot raised a hand. I think only what the little gray cells instruct, monsieur. 4. Lady Amelia's companion. From the crowd stepped a maid in tears who had accompanied Lady Amelia. She sobbed that her mistress had insisted on entering the maze first, proclaiming she would lead the way, as always. The maid had lost sight of her amidst the reflections until the dreadful cry was heard. Poirot asked carefully, did Lady Amelia wear her jewels tonight by her own choice? Yes, sir, the maid whispered. Always, she flaunted them. She would not attend even a fairground without diamonds. She said they reminded people of her importance. Poirot's gaze flicked to the broken necklace at the corpse's side. 5. Edward Stokes. Last came the timid clerk, spectacles glinting. His face was clammy, his lips trembling. Poirot's voice softened. Courage, monsieur. Tell us, where were you when Lady Amelia fell? I do not know. Everywhere looked the same. I was lost. I heard the cry. I swear I did not touch her. Yet you tremble as though with guilt. I once knew Lady Amelia. Years ago, before she married into wealth. She dismissed me cruelly when I asked for her hand. She laughed at me. I never forgot. But I did not kill her, monsieur. I swear upon my soul. The crowd gasped. Motive, clear and bitter. Poirot's gaze lingered upon him. Then, softly, we shall see. The interviews complete, Poirot stood silent, gazing into the mirrored walls around them. 100 reflections of himself gazed back, solemn, inscrutable. Hastings, he murmured at last, do you not see? Here we are in a house of illusions. Reflections multiplied, truths hidden. But there is always a pattern. What pattern? Hastings asked eagerly. Poirot's finger traced the air. Lady Amelia fell in an alcove with 3 mirrors. One was shattered to make the weapon. Yet consider, why there precisely? Why not elsewhere? And why was her necklace broken, when it could have been taken whole? Hastings frowned. Do you mean robbery wasn't the motive? Poirot's mustache twitched. Perhaps. Or perhaps it was meant to appear so. We must distinguish between what is truth and what is but reflection. The lanterns flickered. The mirrored passages loomed. And somewhere within their glittering depths, a killer's shadow moved. Poirot, eyes sharp, spoke softly. Come, Hastings. The theater of mirrors will reveal more than it conceals, if one knows how to look. Chapter 3. Whispers Behind the Curtain. The Grand Orpheum Theater had an unsettling quiet the next morning. Dust motes floated in shafts of pale sunlight that slipped between velvet curtains, illuminating the empty stage where tragedy had unfolded. The glamour of the previous night was gone, replaced by an atmosphere heavy with unease. Even the gilded chandeliers seemed dimmed, their crystals dulled by the pall of murder. Hercule Poirot arrived promptly at 10 o'clock, his shoes gleaming, his mustaches waxed to perfection, and his keen eyes alert as ever. Hastings, loyal and eager though somewhat bewildered, trailed at his side, notebook in hand. Murder, Hastings, murmured Poirot, is a drama in itself, and the stage upon which it has been played is not merely backdrop. It is a character, an SC pas. Look at this theater. She holds her secrets closely, whispering them only to those who listen with attention. Inspector Sharp was already waiting in the orchestra pit, consulting with two constables. He glanced up as Poirot approached. "Monsieur Poirot," he greeted with restrained respect. "I trust you are ready to assist. The coroner has removed Miss Delacroix's body, but I fear we are left with more questions than answers. The cause of death is a stab wound to the chest, swift, precise. No weapon was found at the scene." Poirot nodded gravely. "A murder clean and efficient, without hesitation. That tells us something about our killer. Either great calmness or great passion." He climbed the small steps to the stage, his eyes roving across the set, the ropes, the wings hidden by heavy draperies. "Here, Hastings, is the stage of illusions. One mirror shows us truth, the other lies. We must discern which is which." The first order of the day was to examine the dressing rooms. They were cramped, cluttered spaces filled with costumes, grease paint, perfume bottles, and half-burnt candles. Poirot paused before the door to Vivian Delacroix's chamber. Its gilt-framed mirror was fractured, perhaps from a blow during the struggle, or perhaps deliberately. "Regardez, mon ami," Poirot said, pointing. "The mirror is broken, but not shattered from within. See the glass upon the floor? It lies inside the room. Someone struck it from here, not from without." "Good Lord, Poirot!" Hastings exclaimed. "Do you think the murderer fought with her here before taking her onto the stage?" Poirot's mustache twitched. "Perhaps. Or perhaps Mademoiselle herself struck the glass in anger, in fear. It is the psychology that matters. A mirror broken may reflect a heart broken." Inside the room, he noted a vase of red roses wilting on the vanity, their petals beginning to curl. A card lay tucked among them. "For my star, may tonight be yours forever." But no signature. "An admirer," murmured Poirot, "or a deceiver." The suspects were summoned once more, one by one, to the stage. Poirot observed each carefully, listening as much to what they did not say as to what they spoke aloud. First came Henri Beaumont, the theater owner. His eyes were bloodshot, his fingers restless as they fiddled with a pocket watch. "A tragedy," he declared, voice thick with apparent grief. "The Orpheum's brightest jewel, taken from us. You must find the villain responsible, Monsieur Poirot. My theater cannot withstand scandal." Poirot gave him a long, steady look. "You think first of your theater, monsieur, before the lady who is dead?" Beaumont flushed. I am distraught, of course, but I must think of livelihoods. Hundreds depend upon these doors remaining open." Poirot's little gray cells filed this reaction away. Then came Rosalind Hart, the understudy. Her pale hands trembled as she twisted a handkerchief. "I adored her," she said, though her voice caught. "I never wanted harm to come to her. But she was jealous of me. Said I watch her too closely, try to steal her role. It isn't true. You must believe me." Poirot tilted his head. "And yet, Mademoiselle Hart, jealousy is a curious contagion. Are you so certain that it belonged only to her?" The girl faltered, eyes lowering. Julian March, the leading man, followed. Suave and immaculately dressed, he displayed grief touched with irritation. Vivian was a marvel, but difficult, always demanding, always fearful someone would eclipse her. "We had quarrels, yes, but I would never harm her. My career depends on the stability of this company." Poirot watched him smooth a cufflink with fastidious fingers. "The gentleman protests too elegantly," he whispered to Hastings as March departed. Finally, there was Madame Celeste, the wardrobe mistress, stooped but sharp-eyed. She folded her arms. She was cursed, that one. Beauty like hers always ends in ruin. I told her so, but she laughed. Now she is dead. You speak without sorrow, madam, Poirot noted softly. Celeste's mouth curled. I have seen too many actresses come and go. She was no different. Poirot allowed silence to linger before dismissing them all. Later, as Hastings and Poirot walked the shadowy wings of the theater, Hastings whispered, "What do you make of them, Poirot?" They all had reason, in one way or another. Just so, mon ami. Each has motive enough to place the dagger. But which had the opportunity, and which possessed the courage or the desperation to enact such a crime? Poirot tapped his temple. The answers are here, in the little gray cells. Already they begin to arrange themselves. His eyes fell upon the roses once more, now carried in evidence. A thought glimmered. A hand had written that note. Familiar, perhaps, to those who knew it. And the broken mirror. Yes, there was something in that. A clue not of glass, but of reflection. Poirot turned sharply to Inspector Sharp. We must examine the stage ropes, monsieur. The trapdoor was in use, yes? Let us see whose hands bear the mark of fibers, whose gloves are stained with the dust of the theater's underbelly. For in the theater, the truth hides not in the limelight, but in the shadows. As they descended into the labyrinth beneath the boards, the ropes, the pulleys, the passages where stagehands scurried unseen, the air grew thick with dust and whispers of long-forgotten plays. Poirot paused, lifting a gloved hand. "Ah, mon cher Hastings, do you see it?" Hastings frowned, peering at the floor. "See what, Poirot? I see nothing but dust and rope." Poirot smiled faintly. "Exactly. Dust disturbed, rope frayed. Someone has been here very recently when they should not. This, I think, is where our murderer moved unseen." And with that revelation, the shadows of the Orpheum Theater seemed to draw closer, as though listening to Poirot's every word. Chapter 4. The Gilded Mask Falls. The storm had quieted outside, leaving only the hollow groan of shutters straining against the damp night. Inside Lady Montrose's gilded ballroom, the air had grown heavy. The glitter of chandeliers no longer dazzled, but seemed to mock the tension seeping into every corner. Guests, once laughing and dancing, were gathered now in subdued clusters, eyes darting, whispers rising like faint smoke. At the center of it all, Hercule Poirot stood in his immaculate black suit, hands clasped neatly behind his back, his gaze resting upon each suspect with a surgeon's precision. Lady Montrose, pale and trembling, clutched her pearls as though they alone could shield her from scandal. Beside her, her son Julian fidgeted endlessly with his cufflinks, avoiding every attempt at eye contact. Across the room, Madame Lefebvre dabbed her painted lips with a trembling handkerchief, her eyes darting like a trapped animal. And the mysterious Professor Aldous leaned casually against a column, cigarette dangling, as though the evening's tragedy were a mere inconvenience, not the death of a guest still lying cold in the library. Poirot cleared his throat softly. "Mesdames et messieurs, the hour has come. We can no longer pretend that this is merely a night interrupted by misfortune. One amongst us wears a mask. Oh, a mask most carefully crafted, polished to perfection. Yet, how fragile are such disguises when confronted with the truth. Tonight, we shall see which mask falls." The room shifted uneasily. First, we consider Monsieur Julian Montrose. Poirot's dark eyes fixed upon the young man, a son who stands to inherit, whose mother shields him with a ferocity most touching. Yet, mademoiselle, he gestured toward Lady Montrose, it is too fierce. N'est-ce pas? You protect because you fear what he has done. Mais non, let us be precise. You fear what he might be accused of. Julian swallowed hard. This is absurd. I had nothing to do with Sir Benedict's death. "Non, you did not," said Poirot simply. "You are weak, perhaps, but not murderous." A hush fell. Lady Montrose let out a small gasp, uncertain whether to feel relief or dread. "Now, Madame Lefebvre." Poirot turned his gaze to the French singer, who stiffened under his scrutiny. "Your voice, it is admired across Europe. Yet behind the applause lies a woman desperate to hold her place in society. I learn you once knew Sir Benedict intimately. The guest drew in a sharp breath. Madame Lefebvre's lips trembled. That was years ago. A foolish affair. He promised marriage, but then he vanished. He left me with nothing. Except, said Poirot, tilting his head, for a motive. The singer's eyes glittered with tears. Non. I hated him, yes. But murder? Never. Poirot let her linger in her silence, then turned slowly, deliberately, toward Professor Aldous. And then, we have you, Monsieur le Professeur, a scholar of antiquities, a man whose reputation sparkles in the universities of Europe. Yet, your scholarship is not so spotless, is it? Aldous smirked, exhaling a plume of smoke. Careful, Monsieur Poirot. Academic rivalry is hardly grounds for suspicion. Academic rivalry, non. Fraud? Oui. Theft? Oui. Your so-called discoveries, how shall we say, are borrowed from others who cannot speak, who are silenced forever. And Sir Benedict? He was about to expose you. That is why the quarrel this evening became so heated, why his body now lies in the library. You see, mon ami, when a mask is made of gold, it gleams, but it is heavy, and sooner or later it must fall. The professor's smirk faltered. A bead of sweat traced his temple. The guest stirred uneasily. Lady Montrose's voice cracked. You cannot mean Professor Aldous? He was our most honored guest. Poirot raised a finger. Exactement. A guest who wore the mask of honor, yet beneath it hid the heart of a scoundrel. He tampered with Sir Benedict's drink, laced with a poison most subtle, one he procured through his research. Then, when Sir Benedict collapsed, he ensured no physician was called in time. The quarrel, the whispers, the tension, all to distract from his crime. Ah, but he miscalculated, for Poirot sees what others overlook. The room fell silent except for the ragged breathing of Professor Aldous. His cigarette trembled in his hand. This is nonsense. Poirot stepped closer, his voice soft but cutting. Nonsense, monsieur? Perhaps. Yet, in your study, I have already found the vial. In your pocket, there's a trace of white powder. And on Sir Benedict's cuff, there is your fingerprint pressed as you steadied his fall. Do you deny these? The professor staggered back, his mask finally slipping, eyes wild with the cornered desperation of a man unmasked. Voila, Poirot whispered. The gilded mask falls. Lady Montrose collapsed into a chair, tears streaming down her face. Madame Lefebvre let out a strangled sob. Julian Montrose stared in disbelief, cufflinks slipping from his hand and clattering onto the marble floor. Poirot remained calm, his mustache immaculate, his gaze unshaken. It is finished. The masquerade is ended. And once more, the truth has triumphed. Chapter 5. The Final Curtain Call. The night had grown heavy, a suffocating silence pressing against the velvet walls of the Marlowe Theatre. Only the faint ticking of the great hall's clock punctuated the stillness, each second stretching like a taut string ready to snap. Poirot, with hands folded neatly behind his back, stood in the center of the stage. The single chandelier above cast a pale glow, illuminating the detective like a performer about to deliver his final monologue. Around him, gathered in reluctant obedience, stood the assembled cast of suspects. The grieving widow with her trembling gloves, the ambitious understudy who avoided his gaze, the weary stagehand with calloused fingers, the playwright clutching his cane, and the director whose face was a mask of fragile pride. Each soul carried with them the tension of the evening, secrets gnawing at their silence, while Poirot's eyes, sharp and unyielding, saw not their words, but their shadows. My friends, Poirot began, his voice soft yet commanding, carrying through the empty theater, you have indulged me in this performance. But now, the curtain must fall, and the truth, always, toujours, the truth, must take its bow. He gestured toward the box seats, the very place where the victim had collapsed before an audience frozen in horror. Our tragedian, Sir Lionel Harrow, did not die by fate's cruel hand, nor by the unpredictable whim of chance. Non, He was guided to his death by a hand most deliberate, most calculating, and most familiar. A collective gasp swept through the gathering. Eyes darted between one another, suspicion flaring like sparks in the dark. Poirot raised a finger, silencing the murmurs. Consider, if you will, the poison. A rare tincture, bitter in taste, slipped so cunningly into his evening tonic that none but a practiced hand could have administered it. But who had the opportunity? Who knew his rituals, his weaknesses, the precise moment he would sip? Poirot turned slowly, his gaze lingering on each suspect as though weighing their souls. The understudy, eager to inherit the stage? Perhaps. The widow, trapped in her husband's shadow, yearning for freedom? Peut-être. Or the playwright, desperate to silence the man who dared tarnish his genius. The playwright's cane tapped nervously against the wooden boards. Poirot smiled faintly, tilting his head. But non, mes amis. The poisoner was more cunning still. The crime was not born of greed, nor of envy, but of desperation, an artful act hidden within the theater itself. Recall the prop glass. Recall the substitution. Gas again. Poirot's words struck with precision, like blades. He stepped closer to the director, who flinched beneath the detective's unwavering stare. It was you, monsieur, the maestro behind the curtain. You who orchestrated the show, you who controlled the props, the timing, the illusion. And when Sir Lionel threatened to expose your scandal, your debts, your forgery, you silenced him, weaving murder into the play itself. So perfect, so theatrical. But you miscalculated one thing. Hercule Poirot does not miss the smallest detail. Not the tremor in your hand when the tonic was poured, nor the hesitation when the glass was passed. And most damning of all, your fingerprints upon the vial hidden in the stage wings. The director's face drained of color, his hands twitching as though he might protest. Yet no words came, only silence. Poirot's truth had struck too deep. "C'est fini," Poirot whispered, his voice like the closing of a coffin lid. The inspector stepped forward from the shadows, constables in tow. They seized the director, who hung his head in shame as the others recoiled in horror. The great theater, once echoing with applause, now held only the sound of chains and footsteps fading into the night. Poirot turned back to the stage, adjusting his cuffs with quiet dignity. Justice, Amias Amos, is not always swift, nor is it always kind, but it is inevitable. Like the curtain fall, it comes at the appointed hour. He looked out into the vast, empty seats, as if addressing not just those present, but an audience beyond the veil of the theater itself. His eyes glimmered with a knowing sharpness. Remember this. In every play, in every life, there are secrets waiting to be revealed. And Hercule Poirot will always be there, watching, listening, until the final act. The chandelier flickered once, then steadied, casting Poirot in a solitary pool of light. The detective bowed his head, the case complete, as the curtain of night fell at last. And so ends another case where illusion and truth collided upon stage. But beyond the theater, how many more masks hide lies waiting to be unmasked? If you wish to walk further with Hercule Poirot into the shadows of mystery, then subscribe to Haunting Veils. More secrets await, and the next revelation may be darker still. Stay with us, because the greatest mysteries are yet to come.